Morning and welcome to our January 28th, 2025 Board of County Commissioner meeting. Please join us with Pastor Keegan Steele for our invocation. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. So great to meet you and be joining you today. Thank you so much for having me. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we are so thankful for today. We come before you with hearts that are full of gratitude for the opportunity that we get to be a part of Martin County and for the leaders that you've placed in this room today. God, we lift up the commissioners to you, asking that you would grant them wisdom, clarity, and discernment as they carry the weight of responsibility for this community. God, would you guard their hearts and their minds in every decision they make and strengthen them in their leadership. Lord, I thank you what Hebrews 13:17 reminds us, that we are to obey our leaders and submit to their authority because they keep watch over us and those that must give an account. And Lord, I pray that we would do this so that their work would be a joy and not a burden, and that would be no benefit to you. And so, God, I pray we'd live that out. And Lord, also we lift up the citizens of Martin County to you. God, would they feel your presence and your peace in their lives? We pray for unity and understanding and trust between the community and its leaders. And together that we would build a stronger, even more vibrant county. God, would this meeting be filled with your presence, your peace, and your wisdom, and all the decisions made here today, they would reflect your will. And we trust that you're in work in all things. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Now, would Molly Moriarty and Michael Drost please come to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And afterwards, would you tell us about your tours of duty, please? Thanks.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm BU1 Moriarty, as they call us on drill weekend by our rating and our last name. I've had the pleasure of working for Martin County since 2013 in the Field Ops Department. I'm grateful for Martin County giving me the opportunity to work there and also to be so kind with all of the demands that I had these last few years with service. As we know, we had a tightening of the budget in 2012, and those of us that had good training and diligence got called on very, very often. Since I hired in, I've set up a brand new unit and mission in 2015 in Mayport, Florida, which is up by Jacksonville, running security on patrol boats. We escort ships in and out so that they do not get attacked. Even though that's homeland, it's still an opportunity for homeland issues. I have deployed to Djibouti, Africa, for back-to-back tours. Again, those were involuntary mobilizations. Our unit went, and the unit relieved us, was shorthanded, tried to grab 12 of us, only got 4 of us, and I was one of the 4. Come home from that, we're still shorthanded, and then they call me again to, the actual area is all the way from Newport down to Chesapeake Bay entrance, up to Yorktown to do security on patrol boats and escort our aircraft carriers and others and submarines in at all hours, again, to protect them from any homegrown options that may happen. Fortunately, we haven't. We're a defensive unit. We're not an offensive unit, but we train pretty much like we're offensive. We can do what we need to do, but we're like the bodyguards for the boats. You see us, you go, oh, I'm not going to mess with them. At least that's our intent. However, if we were ever attacked, of course, we would respond in kind. My last deployment, because I've got 21 years and I'm looking at 22 and retiring this year, was supposed to go back to Djibouti, Africa, but they snatched about a few of us up and they were shorthanded on active duty side, so I went to Fujairah, which is in United Emirates, doing, once again, port security, but working in conjunction with active duty. So that's kind of in a nutshell. I want to thank you guys again. A lot of businesses or whatever kind of aren't as sweet and kind as you've been with our obligations to our country, and also respecting us when we come back. My job was there. Mr. Hunter was there. So it was really nice. and I thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you for your service both here and abroad. Mr. Drost, would you like to introduce yourself and address us, please?
Absolutely. Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Michael Drost. As you can see, I am the Veteran Services Offices Manager. I've been with the county since 2018 with GSD. I was the Security and Life Safety Administrator prior to this. I don't want to steal anything from Molly. Thank you so much for leading that in your story. I really do appreciate that. I will certainly have my opportunity here in the near future as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to a new spot.
Let's see, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion, there's an additional item, which is Department 6, which is a request for approval of resolution initiating Chapter 164 Florida Statutes Conflict Resolution Proceedings between Martin County and the City of Stuart regarding the city's noncompliance with the 2023 interlocal agreement and its comprehensive plan. There's also a request to withdraw DPQJ1, which is a request plat approval for 3600 Southeast Sea Point Court. So there's a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. There is one proclamation, and that's a proclamation declaring Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Good morning, Commissioners. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a visionary whose courage and determination to balance the scales of social justice changed the world forever. Dr. King's peaceful crusade against segregation and discrimination has inspired hope in the hearts of men and women throughout our country and around the world. January 20th is the federally recognized Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday when we reflect upon Dr. King's legacy and actively serve others. On Saturday, January 18th, Abundance Love Ministries and the Hope Sound community united to host a commemorative event that honored and celebrated the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And here to accept, we have Geraldine Harriel, who is the Director of Abundance Love Ministries.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Again, my name is Geraldine Harris Harrier. I am CEO of Abundance Love Ministry. We have been doing this event for the past 3 years. We have received our proclamation repeatedly here. I just want to say thank you so much to the board for your diligent work, for serving us in our community. We know that Dr. Martin Luther King stood for unification, equality, and justice. So we're going out and we're proclaiming to bring unity in our community. Also, we had collaborated with Banner Lake Club Academy that we was able to bring Tony Anderson. I know that's a familiar name in this arena. He was able to come and give us a motivation there at the Banner Lake School. And also, he was our speaker for that event on Martin Luther King Day. His topic was then, now, and what shall we do? And today, I just want to say we shall continue to be strong, to be vigilant, and to serve our community with love and peace and harmony with all mankind. But there was also a paraphrase that he used there too. We are all God's children. Some of us are good, some of us are bad. Some of us are messy, some of us just totally a mess. But we're going to continue to strive, we're going to continue to love one another, and we're going to join hands in hand to continue to work for everybody. There'll be equality and justice for all. Thank you so much. We did have a greeting for Campy, but he wasn't able to get that at the time. But we'll be doing this again next year, and we'll look forward to seeing you there as well, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, great.
For a picture. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is public comment. If you have filled in a request to speak form, you have 3 minutes to tell us your thoughts. First is Tom Pine, followed by Julie Priest. Do you want to speak now or in public hearing number 1? Okay. Followed by Bert Krebs. Okay. Good morning.
Commissioners. My name's Tom Pine. I presently live in the Jensen Beach area. I have 4 photos that I had approved earlier. In 2024, the Treasure Coast Food Bank provided over 55 million healthy meals throughout the Treasure Coast, and being vetted is part of the process. Over the last several years, our Community Redevelopment Agency has been handing out $20,000 grants to businesses and CRAs. At a meeting sometime last year at Commissioner Hurd's office, I asked the head of the Community Redevelopment Agency if the businesses that were getting the $20,000 grants were vetted. The answer was a simple no. Here are 2 photos of the downtown Jensen Beach area, the top photos, that at least 2 of these businesses got $20,000 grants. All the buildings are owned by the same person, some of the most expensive real estate in Martin County. The 2 photos on the bottom are from the business at the corner of Dixie Highway and Bridge Road that got approval for a $20,000 grant just recently. It's not unusual to see several beautiful antique cars sitting out front. I want everybody to get this straight. You're struggling to make ends meet. In order to get help, you have to show proof that you have a need. The Community Development Agency comes to town, and there are many, and their main purpose is to make sure everything looks pretty, just like Disney. So they hand out $20,000 grants to businesses in the CRAs without a care in the world, just like the money grows on trees. Be damned the people who are struggling. One of the most hated associations in Florida is the Homeowners Association, where nosy neighbors like to tell other neighbors how to live their life. Now the Community Redevelopment Head wants to change the CRAs into HOAs because hundreds or maybe the thousands of rules and regulations that county government already has to control what you can and can't do on your own property isn't quite enough. And just like every other banana republic, the scam continues on the taxpayer's back. Thank you for your help.
Thank you. Doug Farley is next.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Doug Farley. I live in Jensen Beach. I have a couple of comments and questions. I'm allowed to ask questions?
We don't do a back and forth, but you can ask questions.
Well, I want to talk about the implementation of quiet zones at railroad intersections. It was my understanding that your staff, I think it was the Public Works Department, was tasked with a survey and study regarding the viability of quiet zones at intersections, and it was supposed to end in September. No? That's what I was told by your staff. So that was months ago, and my question is this commission going to act on that? Are they going to move forward on implementing quiet zones at railroad intersections? I urge you to do so, please. These horns, they're just noise pollution, folks. They're not safe. I understand your primary position, your main purpose is the safety of Martin County citizens and its visitors. That's understandable. But you also have you have to consider the quality of life of your citizens as well. Now, the upgrades at the intersections that were made when Brightline came through satisfied the Federal Railroad, Federal Railroad, what do they call themselves? Commission. They have guidelines so that communities like this can silence horns at intersections. Those guidelines have been met with double gates. So with that, you can have quiet zones and be absolved of liability. I understand that's probably the biggest concern. So people are under the misconception that horns are safe. They're not. They don't work. Gates work. Barricades work. And I'll point out the recent story down in Delray Beach where that fire truck went around the gate on his way to a call. If there was a double gate there, that wouldn't have happened. I've been in that position. I was in the fire department for 31 years, and I drove fire engines, and when we approached a gate, we come to a stop. So anyway, I just urge this commission to move forward and have quiet zones at the intersections for our quality of life. And it's a win-win situation. The barricades are safe, you're satisfying that obligation, and now without horns, you're satisfying the obligation of quality of life. And the beauty of it is, it doesn't cost anything. The upgrades have already been made by Brightline. You don't have to go to the taxpayer with your hat in your hand to fund any building or infrastructure. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Heatherington.
I was just going to refer to Don that I believe, Sarah, that we have an agenda item coming up.
We are scheduling an agenda item to discuss it in terms of course, the county doesn't control all of the intersections, and so there'll be a presentation to you on quiet zones, the application process. Staff has been working with the Federal Rail Administration. They have their own scoring that you have to get below. The gates are just one piece of it. There's also the speed and the number of accidents. So anyway, that presentation will be coming to you all in the near future.
So no date set for that?
No.
Is that when the commission puts out the notice of meetings?
Sir, you would have to be on the mic, and we do not exchange with conversation. We will not have a discussion with you here today. I'll just have a discussion with the board. Thank you.
For clarity's sake, I'm in favor of quiet zones.
Donna Ward is next.
I have some papers, can I?
Sure.
My name is Donna Ward, I'm new to Jensen Beach, I just bought a house today.
Hold the mic down a little
Sorry.
bit. You can pull it down towards.
Okay. I'm an avid pickleball player, I'm playing at Langford 7 days a week, it's a great park, I love it. The only problem is the crowd is horrendous. Now, I heard there's a 5-year, $5 million project for all of Martin County for pickleball, but 5 years is a really long time to wait when you're already waiting 30 minutes for a game. The easiest solution is a blended court where you have tennis and pickleball on the same court. You leave the tennis net in place and you have portable nets. And we could do it for nothing. The pickleball players will chip in. You can paint the lines or you can get tape. I have pictures of the utilization. Just this past Sunday, there were 16 people playing and 22 people waiting to play, and there were 2 completely empty tennis courts. And it's like that all the time. You can, if you look at the thing, you can, I don't know if I should put it here.
No, if you handed it out.
Okay. You can get 4 pickleball courts out of 1 tennis court. And this is a machine that puts down the tapes, and we have a player that has that, is willing to use it. And all you have to do is clear the court of debris. You get a chalk line, you measure, you put the tape down, you put a primer so that the paint doesn't bleed, and then you put a coat of paint. Now, the other way is this cloth tape. It's from Amazon. It has no residue. And there's a review from Texas that said they had it down for a month, hot weather, rain. It lasted a month. They think it could last maybe another 2 months. But these courts are used 7 days a week from sun up till after sundown. I went there last night. There were 16 players. There was nobody waiting, 16 players, 2 completely empty tennis courts. There were 2 10-year-old boys playing and a father and teaching his son how to play, and that's all that was there. I believe that tennis and pickleball can peacefully coexist. I just bought this rain shuttle. It's top of the line, super-sized squeegee on wheels that is very effective for moving the rain from the courts, and we would cheerfully share it with the tennis players after we change our courts. I'm leaving this Thursday, I'm going skiing, and on my way back, I'm stopping in New York, and I'm going to pick up 5 dozen bagels, because I think a great way to get along with people is to break bread. So if I don't break a leg skiing, or my plane's not delayed, I'll be here on Wednesday, and I'm bringing cream cheese and butter. You got to bring your own lox, but if you tell me what kind of bagel you want, I'll set it aside for you.
Well, we meet on Tuesday, so don't come on Wednesday.
No, you want to come down to the courts.
Oh, I
And
see.
see for yourself. Bring your sneakers. You could try pickleball if you know. It's a great sport. We have a player who's 90 years old, Ralph. He line dances, he plays pickleball, and he's still competitive. It's great for all ages. Pickleball has grown 223% in the last 3 years, and tennis is like 10%.
Ma'am,
And we
your
do-
time is up. Thank
Okay,
you.
sorry. Thank you.
Jolynn Jensen is next.
I just want to make one comment.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Vargas.
Yes, I just want to make one comment. I have been to the pickleball courts, and I've spoken with a lot of players there, so I understand your reasoning, and I've looked at your packet in the short time that I've had it in my hands, so hopefully we would come to a solution.
About that.
Yes, I'll speak with him. Not at all.
Ms. Jensen is followed by Gail Goldie.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jolynn Jensen, and I am representing the Rio Civic Club today. The first document that we've handed out to all of you is our new brochure celebrating 75 years of doing good in the neighborhood. We are so pleased that for 75 years, the Rio Civic Club has worked cooperatively with the county, with other organizations to improve conditions in the Rio neighborhood. Some of you may know that Rio was started in 1893, and it has a total of about 1,600 residents and businesses now. Our goal is to continue improving conditions in Rio as we redevelop it. And thankfully, we've got a wonderful Rio NAC that works cooperatively with us on projects to beautify it and to continue to improve it. Some of you may know, not that any of us remember, but some of you may know that in 1950, the Rio Civic Club was actually created to pave 707, or Dixie Highway, as it's known now. So we've come a long way. What you also have there besides the brochure is you have an invitation to our 75th anniversary celebration, which will be held on March the 5th at 5 p.m. And you will have a display of the past of Rio, as well as the present and the future. And we are so pleased that Eileen Vargas has agreed to be our honored guest and speaker at that event. On behalf of the Rio Civic Club, I would like to speak in support of the CRA architectural design standards that you all will be considering. We have been very involved in those standards, in the creation of those standards for years. I was reading newsletters going back to 1999 last night, and the Rio Civic Club has worked to maintain standards, not strict like an HOA, but reasonable standards so that the homes, the businesses, the yards are within a reasonable state of repair. And we're continuing to do that. We believe that the standards that have been suggested are appropriate for Rio, and we encourage you all to approve them.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Gail Goldie is next, and Dan Braden, would you like to speak on public or on PH1? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. Gail Goldie, 1153 Northwest 12th Terrace in Stewart. Good morning, Commissioners. The blog I'm about to read can be found on wecaremartin.org on their website. Martin County has made significant efforts to pursue a lawsuit against the city of Stuart for failing to write a letter supporting the Brightline Station grant. From discussing it on the dais to having phone calls with administrators, writing official letters, engaging in internal discussions, and even drafting a detailed 5-page resolution. However, the issue was never raised by any commissioner or the public to be placed on the agenda. This raises serious questions about the accountability and representation. If the commission isn't the leading voice behind these decisions, then who is? Who is shaping the narrative that ultimately determines how taxpayer dollars are spent? If this isn't coming from the commission, who then governs our county? The overwhelming influence of county administrators has become concerning. It raises questions about whether they are truly taking control of the decision-making for the entire community. And if they are, shouldn't they be elected to represent us through the democratic process? The county attorney and administrator are supposed to serve at the commission's discretion. But currently, the roles appear to be reversed. Where are we headed as a community when the county administration considers suing our county seat, over disputes regarding spending taxpayer funds? What is the end game? Such actions state significant resources and jeopardize the foundational trust and cooperation essential for our community's progress. These recent developments have revealed the murky political landscape that has long been clouded by special interest and entrenched agendas. Do our commissioners really believe that pursuing legal action against the city is wise? Is the commission aligning with the current chain of authority, or will they seize the chance to reclaim control? Commissioners, let's see if you have the resolve to avoid unnecessary conflict, unite and restore the community confidence, or are we simply heading into the abyss? And I have 3 words for the commissioners: transparency, transparency, transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the last request to speak form I have for public comment. Anybody else? Ms. Lee? Anybody else? Good morning.
I guess I'm speaking on PH1, that's the CRA, the new,
Do you want to speak at public or do you want to speak at PH1?
well, I can do both. No, one? I'm going to just do public then, because I've
Okay.
got another appointment. I just want to say that I know this was worked on all of last year by a lot of different people, a lot of different groups. I'm in support of it. I think it'll open it up for more people to participate, and I just wanted to show up and tell you all that I support the new arrangement that the CRA is going for today. So I hope you'll approve it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to address us for public comment? In that case, we will now go to commissioner comments. Commissioner Heatherington.
I'm all set this morning. Thanks.
Commissioner Campy.
I'm all set this morning.
Commissioner Capps.
Good morning. It's been a busy time since our last meeting, and we've had the privilege to be involved in a few community activities that I wanted to tell you about. On January the 16th, I was privileged to administer the oath to the new board of the Indiantown Chamber of Commerce at the historic Seminole Inn, and we wish the chamber a wonderful year ahead. And then on January 20th, I got to walk in the Martin Luther King Parade here in Stuart in very chilly weather. I was underdressed and a bit frigid, but it was a great event. And then on January 22, we had the Hobe Sound Chamber After Hours at Seacoast Bank. where we had the poster unveiling for the Hobe Sound Festival of the Arts that will be occurring this weekend. The featured artist this year is Robin Lee Makowski, a very important figure in Hobe Sound. She is best known for her iconic painting, Safe Arbor. And it's a painting of our famous ficus trees going to Hobe Sound Beach. You've probably seen this picture over the years. It was painted in 2004, and they have been out of these posters for many years, and they've been in high demand. People have been requesting them for years. And Robin no longer lives in our community, but she came down for this. And because she's the featured artist, they have revived this poster and print, and they're going to be available this weekend at the Festival of the Arts. So make sure you make it there and get your print of Safe Arbor. And then lastly, this past Sunday morning was a big deal in Hobe Sound. The historic Hobe Sound train station arrived to its forever home on Dixie Highway in Hobe Sound. I'm sure many of you saw pictures on Facebook. And everything went super well. We want to thank Brownie Structural Movers for getting this job done without a hitch. And we want to thank the Martin County Sheriff's Office. They played an integral role. And we want to thank FPL for moving all the power lines, because the building was so tall that many power lines stretching across the roads had to be pulled down and put back up. We want to thank county staff. They were awesome, and they put so much into helping us get this done. And lastly, we want to thank a number of key community leaders who put forth the vision for this and paved the way to make it all happen. So those are my things for comment this time.
Thank you. Commissioner Vargas.
Yes, I also was at the Martin Luther King Parade, but I was dressed appropriately. So, yeah, it has been busy. The Jensen Beach Chamber of Commerce celebrated 75 years, and there's seashells and diamonds at the Hutchinson Shores Resort and Spa. Installation of 2025 officers and directors, where I had the honor to recognize each recipient and administer the oath of office. It was highlighted with videos capturing stories and legacies of success, highlighted by preserved newspaper clippings, videos of the only TV station at that time interviewing local business owners, old Jensen Beach aerials, past board of directors, presidents and chairs, awards presentation, and music by Rainfall, a very talented local reggae band. We also had the Young Professionals of Martin County, installation of officers and board of directors at the Flagler Center downtown Stuart, honoring those businesses 40 under 40 that are run by young entrepreneurs. For example, Culver's Custard, 2 locations here in town, Seacoast Bank, a veterinary doctor, a rental apartment SEO, a family-run garage replace and repair, and rental apartments branding and marketing. So there was a variety of businesses, and those individuals that chose to step out, they have made their mark on our community. This past weekend, Martin Reads, part of Children's Services Council of Martin County, the 10th Street Community Center in Stuart hosted a literacy event, 1st through 4th graders. As a former reading teacher in the county school system, I do understand the importance of developing the habit of reading. And I explained to them, in kid-friendly terms, what it means to me and how it helped me become a better leader by learning from the best. History influencers, teachers, explorers, and superheroes as they solved problems, made tough decisions, and helped others. And also to become a better listener, a really good listener, and how to stay calm when things get tricky. They also did a short video with me featured that will help them promote this skill. The local Stuart small business, Bubba Coos Burritos, provided lunch, and again, young entrepreneurs and the Gratitude Steel Band provided the melodies. It was a great time for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Donaldson.
Just one quick item, and that is our registration is currently open for our next Martin Cares, which begins March 27th, and we do have some openings. So anybody watching here or anybody in the audience that's interested in participating in our Martin Cares program, please register. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Woods?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Heatherington?
Forgot to announce something, if you don't mind, Mrs. Chair. So the Martin County Council of the Arts will host Arts Fest in downtown Stuart, Saturday, February 8th and 9th. And yes, the Super Bowl is also the 9th, but the Arts Fest ends at 4 on Sunday. So please join us. It will be in the park downtown, and a couple of us now are on the Arts Council board, and we look forward to a really exciting show and a turtle hunt, too.
There are no consent pulls. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Approved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. We will now take up public hearing number 1, which is a public hearing to consider adoption of an ordinance amending Article 12, Divisions 1 through 7, Community Redevelopment Code, Land Development Regulations, Martin County Code regarding architectural design standards. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Susan Corres, Community Development Director, and I am here with Dana Little and Jessica Seymour, both of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about architectural design standards in the CRAs.
Jessica Seymour from Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. While we load up our presentation, as you may be familiar with already, from Article 12, which is the CRA-specific land development regulations, we are asked today, or with this project, to take a look at the architectural standards more specifically. The first portion of that Article 12 are general rules that apply to all of the CRAs, and then they break into more specific regulations for each of the CRAs. Today, those architectural regulations live in those more specific areas of each of those, for each of the CRAs, and we wanted to clarify that the work that we're doing today does not change or propose any changes to the permitted uses, lot coverage, the heights that are currently permitted. This is specifically looking at just the architectural standards. Why are we looking at the architectural standards? 4 of the 6 CRAs already have architectural standards. And in their implementation, there's been a desire to have more styles available to more of the CRAs. We are also looking at the improvement of the frontage type coordination requirements with the architectural style requirements and standards. So there's been some disconnect between those 2 elements of the code. We wanted to improve the language for its application to commercial and multifamily versus single-family homes, because today those architectural standards do not address those different uses very well. And we wanted to include more illustrative examples, photos and drawings. If we're talking about architectural standards, it's very important to have some visual examples of what those are. So as a little timeline of where we are, where we've come, the CRAs have had their own land development regulations since 2004. There was a big overhaul of those standards in 2021. Those really focused on the layering of the permitted uses, the development standards like lot coverage, and addressing some of the concerns that were in that. We did not touch the architectural standards at that time. That was seen as a worthwhile of its own separate effort to make sure that we had the community engagement needed for the architectural standards. This is the timeline of where we've been with this project. We kicked off in February of last year. We've done a presentation on the value of design for communities that was open to the entire community. We've continued to have outreach with the AIA, the American Institute of Architects. This was presented as well to the Historic Preservation Board, the Treasure Coast Builders Association, and then again, we touched back with the Treasure Coast AIA. We obviously went to our NACs and got feedback from each of the neighborhood advisory committees, the CRA, and the LPA, and now we're here in front of you. To do this work, I've been helping my daughter a lot with her math homework, and we always talk about the importance of showing your work. So this document right here is the Design Standards Reference Guide, and this is essentially showing our work. The background knowledge to what went into our research for developing the architectural standards, the proposed architectural standards. In front of you is an example of one of those pages that was shown in the document. We went to look at what are the historic structures in each of the CRAs. We also did driving tours to identify what are the existing styles in those CRAs. And we also took an extensive look at different land development regulations across the state and what they're doing to create standards for architectural in their communities. All that information went into the LDRs, like I mentioned. That's just really just showing our homework. And I'll go through what the proposed land development regulations are. I mentioned the driving tours. When we looked at the existing standards that are out there today, so again, we have architectural standards in the majority of our CRAs today. And these 6 styles, Florida Vernacular, Mediterranean Revival, Anglo-Caribbean, Bungalow, Art Deco, and Classical Traditional, are what's reflected in the rules and standards today. After our driving tours and meeting with multiple architects and builders through the community, we heard that we needed to add additional styles. So those additional styles that were identified were mid-century modern, which is actually quite prevalent in a lot of our communities. Mission, which is also part of the kind of historic background to many of the CRAs. Ranch, the Main Street vernacular, and the contemporary style. Again, from input from the American Institute of Architects, we brought all 11 of these styles to each of the NACs and asked those NACs in that public forum, what are the most appropriate styles for your community? So we presented all of them. In the land development regulation document that you'll have in your agenda package, I'm going to go through kind of the DNA of how each of those styles is introduced. So it's first introduced with some images of examples of that style, and then it goes into what are the required elements of that style. It's broken up into 5 required elements, and those elements are what make up a building: roof, doors, windows, finishes. The frontage type is a standard on how the front of the building meets the street, so a porch, for example, in Florida vernacular. We spent a lot of time looking at these required elements to make sure that they are of a rational nexus for that style, and also a flexible enough so that there's more variety in the community, and also meeting more modern building styles. For example, and this gets into the specifics of architecture, the Florida vernacular style today calls out for crawl spaces in that architectural standard. People are not building homes with crawl spaces very often anymore. So we want to remove that existing standard that exists. Another part of the Florida vernacular styles today requires a roof pitch of 6 to 12. Roof pitch is, how steep your roof is. That 6 to 12 requirement for a Florida vernacular, again, is not very consistent with some of the examples that are out there in the built environment today. It's not consistent with how many of the builders and architects are specifying their homes today. So we recommended more flexibility of a 4 to 12 slope to 12 to 12 slope. So there's more flexibility from what the existing standard is today. Another, again, with the roof, and what we heard again and again is we needed more flexibility in what shape of the roof is required. Right now, you're required to have a gable end roof in Florida vernacular, for example. That's where you have a kind of a triangle at the end of your roof, like this example in the image. That is more prone to damage in a hurricane, and there's some impacts to the cost of your homeowner's insurance down the line if you have a gable end roof. So we introduced hip as more of the styles so that you can have that option of a hip roof in more of the styles than exist today. The next page, these 2 pages here, we show an example of what a single-family home in that style looks like, and then a multifamily or a more commercial structure. And again, that was to address the concerns that our guidelines today don't address commercial structures as well. And then on the other side of the page, you'll see there are the recommended or encouraged features. These are not required of every building, but they do enhance that style and further, they're very common elements of that style. These are not required of a project in these proposed regulations unless you are in the core subdistrict. And the core subdistrict is where you've got the highest concentration of buildings, the main street of your building, the front door of your CRA, for example. And then in that case, you would have the option to pick 3. So there's an option to the applicant, the architect, and the homeowner or the business owner. I'll run through all of the styles, and then we'll talk about which NACs, what the discussion was like for each of the NACs, about which styles were appropriate for their NAC. So Mediterranean Viable, many of us are familiar with that. The clay, barrel tile roofs are a very common feature. The Anglo-Caribbean really comes out of St. Augustine. It's an example of some mixed materials of stucco and wood siding. And Dana, if you want to add to any of these, please feel free, Dana Little, on any of the architectural styles as we go through them. The bungalow, very common to have the porch, a very common popular style, again, for single-family homes. Art Deco. Art Deco, the eyebrow is often the most iconic piece of that style, along with the more simple, stripped down architectural features, but there's still a lot of depth and texture to them as well. Mid-century modern. This one was really interesting, again, in our driving tours to see how often there are mid-century modern homes in our CRAs, and that was not reflected at all in the existing standards. So this was a really important one to add. I particularly like this example from Rio with the really expressive roof and the chimney elements.
If I may add to this, this is also a very popular style these days. You may notice that a lot of renovations that are occurring in historic districts or areas like the CRAs, a lot of attention is being put back into this style of architecture. So the fact that it was missing was very prevalent once we got into this.
The ranch style, also a very prevalent style in our neighborhoods that was not reflected in the existing standards. It would be hard to see how those fit into those 6 categories previously. The mission style, this one again is really nice. You see it a lot in Golden Gate, a couple of homes in Hope Sound as well. It also lends itself to commercial structures very well, or even small apartment missing middle type housing as well. The Main Street vernacular, this was a really important one to add as well. This is our bread and butter of all of our downtowns, our main streets. And again, it was not very clearly reflected in the existing standards. And this is really a lot about how the rhythm of the building and how it meets the street, and how that frontage interacts with the neighborhood. Classical traditional, this one was one that was already part of the standards, but you could also see some examples of on some of the estate lots where these homes might be applicable, or again in more commercial structures. There's also, the more Tudor style or colonial styles that might be something that you see in Savannah would also fall in this example, this umbrella of styles.
If I may add too, this is, we had a lot of discussion about this in the NACs. And interestingly, in Jensen, when we were discussing this, the applicability of this style, while it may not seem necessarily useful for single family, but for civic buildings, it's certainly useful. And in fact, the Jensen Beach Community Center fits this style specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Civic buildings, churches as well, that might be an applicable use of this style as well. And then the contemporary style. This is really the maximum flexibility. They can be rooted in historic styles, but they really have a lot of flexibility to them. So each of those styles was presented to each of the NACs. This is a matrix that shows you where the existing styles occur today. So you'll notice Jensen Beach has a guidebook. The green check mark indicates where that style is already a part of the LDRs or a guidebook. Rio right now has no standards, as well as the Golden Gate CRA. Old Palm City, Hope Sound, and Port Salerno, again, have those existing architectural standards for those indicated. We went to Jensen Beach. There was a robust conversation there. The only style that was looked at adding was the Main Street vernacular, again, reflecting the Main Street that already exists in Jensen Beach. Rio had a really robust conversation. The indication by the board was to add all of the styles so that they had the maximum level of flexibility while including those styles. Old Palm City recommended improving the mid-century, adding the mid-century modern, the ranch, the mission, and the Main Street vernacular. Hope Sound similarly wanted to have the maximum amount of flexibility with just the ranch not being added. And again, with Port Salerno, more flexibility was what the board direction gave us from the NAC. So those are all been added. And then for Golden Gate, again, they would all be added. They did not elect to include the Art Deco or the classical traditional. And again, because those would not reflect that neighborhood character as well. I wanted to point out in your agenda package, it's a lengthy LDR package. So just to kind of break down the 3 types of changes that are included in there. One is the necessary changes just to make sure that the document is coordinated. This includes adding additional glossary items and also striking through the existing language. And this is some example of that. Oh, this is actually the example of the coordination with the frontage type. We didn't want to have language in 2 different places talking about the same standard. So this is, again, to clean that up so that it's easier to find the material when you're applicant to understand the standards. This is another place where that shows up. So this is where that language is replaced in the new proposed standards. Another big one that we came across at the end of the process was looking at what's called facade transparency. And facade transparency is planning speak for just saying adding windows to your building. When we started the work back in 2019, we introduced the facade transparency requirement for some of the building types. It was not included for types that were predominantly used for single-family homes. Again, the assumption being that most people would include a window on their front facade. We found that that wasn't true, actually, and that there were projects coming across without any windows on the front of their buildings. And so it's a very small percentage. What we're proposing is a requirement of a 15% facade transparency, that there be a window on the front of the facade. We also are recommending that as well for the outbuilding, the boat barn, and the industrial buildings. And again, this is so that you don't have a neighborhood fabric without any articulation on the front of the building. Is there anything else you want to add to that? Since you've received the October 29th draft, we have continued to talk to applicants and building professionals in the neighborhood who have provided some input. One of them was we wanted to add the casement window to the bungalow building style. Again, when we list out the applicable window styles, casement should have been in there, so we wanted to correct the record on that. We also, talking again to folks who have hear what applicants want, what individuals want to build, and they wanted to make sure that it was clear that black could be used as a trim color, frame color, and for architectural accents. So that's another piece of language that we wanted to modify from the package that you've received already. And the last of which was the existing overhang requirements. There's existing overhang requirements for the Florida vernacular, the bungalow, and the proposed ranch style. They require a 24-inch overhang. 24-inch overhang, and this is an image of what we're talking about to the right, help to protect the walls of a structure from rain. They do a lot of work. They're not just for an architectural aesthetics, but they were born out of those historic styles because they protected the building. And those deep overhangs are very characteristic of the styles. But we did hear from the building community that they would like to see a little more flexibility within that, a little relief from that standard. And so we're recommending that they can go to the 18-inch minimum overhang for the Florida vernacular and the bungalow. I just wanted to point out that the CRA has been distributing this information widely through their website and through several emails through the process. And so it's been very helpful to get feedback in addition to the meetings that we've had and NAC input. And that concludes the presentation.
Thanks, Jess.
Commissioner Hetherington.
Back to the, Jessica, the windows, the 15% facade coverage, that only applies to the front facing the street, correct?
Correct,
Doesn't
yes.
apply to the other sides?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, thanks.
And to your point, Commissioner, we tested that many different ways to try to find out what would be a reasonable percentage. And we felt comfortable that with a regular facade on a 50-foot wide lot, 15% was really very doable.
If I can, I'd like to just speak a little bit about coordination with the community and the different groups that we talked with and how important that input was and what input we kind of coordinated in this effort. So I'm going to go by group. We spoke with lots of architects. They had a lot of input that they wanted to give to us. For example, and I'm going to go through a little list, they wanted to increase the size of the accessory structure to 450 square feet, which we thought was fine, from 400 square feet, so that was incorporated. The Florida vernacular, I think Jess went through. It's an extremely popular style in all of our CRAs, and we added 3 additional roof types, the additional slope, additional materials for the roofs, doors, and windows. We made 4 requirements into 3, and we proposing to change the roof overhang as well. And we added additional features to those needed in the core subdistrict. If you remember, Jess went through one page of if you're in the core, you need to add 3 required elements. And it was brought to our attention that some of those styles only had 3 more required elements. So those were the ones you would have to have chosen if you were going in that direction. So we added additional features to that so that, again, a builder, an architect, or a homeowner would have additional flexibility and affordability. And we took out the gable ends, which Jess mentioned. We also do not require a hardy stucco front anymore, and that increases affordability. And then we talked with builders, and we had input from them. Some of that was minimum depth of the balconies to be smaller, because they felt that would increase affordability as well. We changed the language for the use of black trim doors and made it clearer for property owners and builders. That was actually brought to us by a builder. And we added a range of sizes for clarity. So the old regulations say large or deep to describe some of the architectural features. And that's difficult for homeowners, builders, and architects. What does that exactly mean? What is large? What is deep in the opinion of the architectural community? So we added exact ranges for that so that people would know what they could do, couldn't do, and would have that additional flexibility and clarity. We added exterior finishes to our list so that they could choose more types of finishes. In the community actually was really knowledgeable about this. One of the changes that we made, the casement windows, we had a community member in Port Salerno who gave us 3 emails with pictures all about the windows in bungalows, historical pictures, and why casement. She made an excellent case why those types of windows should be included. So that is one of the proposed things that we are bringing you today. We took out the stories. So in the beginning, we had something additionally in this package that said, bungalows are 2 stories, or, Mission can be 3 stories. And that was confusing to the community. And 2 CRAs, namely Golden Gate and Port Salerno, both recommended to us that that was confusing. And it sounded like we were telling people how many stories they could build on their house, when in fact it was just you could do this, not that you had to. So we took that out. We added additional pictures of every style. That was a big recommendation from lots of our community folks. And in general, we took out other things that would increase flexibility and affordability, like style colors. We added definitions so that everybody would know, be on the same page, if you will. We offered the reference guide so that people could look at what was in the community and coordinate that way. We added a visual sheet to show how to implement the project in the CRA from start to finish and how to read the new standards. We also removed operable shutters from some of our styles. And instead of having all the architectural design throughout the entire outside of the house, we are including that it can be just on areas visible to the right-of-way, which also would include some affordable parts there. And I would just also like to give you a little more information, which is that this is something that actually is in our comp plan. Our comp plan says, provide for the visual continuity of designated redevelopment areas through application of sound principles of architectural design and landscaping. It's also in all of our community redevelopment plans and our countywide community redevelopment plan. So this doesn't come from the CRA office. This comes from what the mission of the CRA is, and I think it's well defined in all of those documents. To respect our area's identities, and certainly the community is interested in doing that, enhancing the public space, protecting the value of all the public and private investment, improving the quality of the growth and development that we're seeing, and serving as a helpful tool for all of those that are involved, designers, architects, community members, homeowners, residents, builders, et cetera. Thank you.
Commissioner Vargas.
Yeah, I I did listen to your presentation today and before, and quite familiar with it. I've attended the NAC meetings in Rio and Jensen Beach. Really familiar with this type of architecture as being active in real estate in Miami and different sections. My first home that I bought, I was 22 years old. I had a Mission style. I'm looking at it right here. I saw the picture. I said, that's my house. I had the crawl space, which was cooling. There was no air conditioning at that time, but when I moved into it, there was air conditioning. And the casement windows, chimney, all the touches inside, Pecky cypress, wood floors, cracked Mediterranean tile. Beautiful. If there was someone who wanted to buy in that north section of Coral Gables, they had to follow one of the styles that were accepted. They couldn't just build something that was totally contemporary unless they were in the south section of Coral Gables. So what I'm getting at is, like here in Jensen Beach, I see that Mission and Art Deco are not included. Is this static insofar as what is possible?
So this is something that, it's an LDR change. So if the NAC or the board would, in a future date, want to look at adjusting this again, just like we're adjusting it today, it would be an opportunity. It would have to go through that same process, though. And this is reflective. Jensen Beach is unique because it is one of the smallest of them. And so right now, there's no examples that you can really point to of Mission. But if there was a desire to change that would go through the same LDR process that we're going through today. This reflects what we heard from the NAC, though, as far as the styles.
Then I am starting to get pushback from people. You can't dictate how my home should look. Why does it have to be like this? And I do try and explain some of what you've explained, but you've explained it exceedingly well. And they feel that it's dictatorial and it's similar to an HOA. But I explained to them that nobody is forcing them to live in a certain section of Jensen Beach or Rio, in my case, and there are other districts too. And that if they want to be outside of, and correct me on the words, the core, and then there's the perimeter portion of that. Neighborhood. There is another section that they can build pretty much whatever style that they would wish. Is that correct?
That is correct, and it's important sometimes to remember as well that CRA areas make up 1% of the county. And in the rest of the county, these standards do not exist.
And if I may add to that, I would recommend that anyone that has those concerns, and I understand that, in the reference guide that Jessica mentioned, we identified 20 different examples that we drew from around the state of Florida of different LDRs and design guidelines. Some of them, like Coral Gables, can be very, very detailed and very specific about what's required. Some of them are a bit looser. So my recommendation would be anybody that has those understandable concerns, really look at what's being required. It's simply stating that if you want to do a certain style, your windows shall be of this proportion, or that you have a certain type of overhang. I don't think there's anything really onerous in what we're recommending compared to what is existing in the regulations today. There are onerous requirements that exist today within the regulations. So our choice was with the NACs to fix the existing regulations, rewrite them, which is what we've done, or just get rid of the entire process. And never did we hear from the NACs get rid of the design standards altogether.
Commissioner Hetherington.
My question relates to the accessory dwelling units, and we had this conversation in my office. So, and I see that as going to be a more prevalent and prominent thought as affordability is, and workforce housing is addressed. And people are going to want to have accessory dwelling units, and whether it be their college kids or their parents, maybe my college kids too, are going to need to, use this as affordable housing. So you mentioned the ADUs, and if, say I have an ADU on one of these structures, does the window facade and the porch requirement, does that apply equally to the accessory dwelling unit? How do we keep those affordable and make sure that something that completely wipes out the affordability of having the accessory dwelling unit is not in here, yet it meets the standard, the architectural standard of the community?
So if it exceeds that 450 square foot footprint number there, it would need to be consistent with the style, but it does not have to have the frontage type. So it does not have to have its own porch or its own arcade, for example. It would, it just needs to be consistent. And by that, it means they shouldn't be completely mismatched from one another. And so we kept that in mind with the affordability. The facade transparency, for example, that wouldn't apply to that accessory dwelling unit unless it was like a carriage type house where that became the primary facade, where there's a few for the estate lots. There's some cases where an ADU can be in front of the house. So in that case, the facade transparency requirement would be required to them. But again, that's because that's up against the street. So if it's in the rear, it would the staff would be looking for just a consistency with the existing structure or the primary structure.
So that would include consistency with materials, color, that kind of thing.
So it has to match, but it doesn't have to have its own porch or balcony or
It
that.
doesn't have to be a little duplicate of the house.
And as Jessica pointed out, that's for a footprint size that's 450 square feet or greater. That may not sound like a large number, but it's actually a pretty big footprint size for an accessory dwelling unit or an accessory structure. That's 20 by 22 feet, approximately.
Commissioner Vargas.
Yes, I'm very familiar with carriage houses, additional small cottages, on lots, and I think it's going to be more sought after because a lot of people don't like to live in a box in a condominium, and they want to see the grass outside and be able to walk sidewalks. So my understanding from what you're saying, if you cannot see the frontage of the cottage or the carriage house from the street, it doesn't have to follow precisely. Am I correct? He's nodding his head. No.
Not exactly. As Jessica said, if your footprint size is 450 square feet or greater, then you have to be consistent aesthetically, architecturally with the principal structure. Those specific requirements, though, like the frontage type, where you are required with a certain style to have a front porch, that additional element is not required for the building in the back.
I understand exactly what you're saying. So if you're, say, 450 or less, 449, then that doesn't have to follow principally with the main structure. Is that correct?
Yes, and the reason for that is that there are, and we heard this throughout, not so much this process, but the previous process when we were going through the code, that you can go out and buy pre-manufactured structures, a garage, a shed, something like that. So we didn't want to penalize folks that if they went out and bought a shed that was 420 square feet, that they had to modify it to look like the main house.
Okay.
Chances are, the thought was, chances are, if you're building a structure in the rear that has a greater footprint than that, it might, the likelihood might be greater that it's built on site, as opposed to just trucked in.
And if I could add to that, so what the specific language says, for accessory structures less than the 450 square foot, the use of a complementary or matching color shall meet the requirements of this standard. So that's the, if you're under that size, you still should ideally be complementary to the primary structure, but it can be satisfied with the use of color in that example, if that helps to clarify.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's hear from the public. Julie Priest will be followed by Bert Krebs. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairwoman Hurd and honorable members of the board. I am Julie Priest, a 47-year resident of District 1 and an advocate for revitalization and traditional neighborhood design, also known as new urbanism and walkable communities. As the 1980s downtown Stuart merchant, I was tuned in on how to create communities where people want to live, work, and play when the accomplished architect and planner, Andre Stwani, came to kickstart the revitalization of our depressed county seat. His vision became reality, and I got to experience what good planning and implementation can do. The character and identity of each of Martin County's 6 historic CRA neighborhoods are unique because of their history. Residents in these neighborhoods support enhancing that historic character by incorporating recognized architectural styles that complement and elevate their neighborhoods. We all understand that a well-constructed structure will be there for probably 50 years or more. Therefore, the features should be appropriate to an established architectural style. My husband and I have constructed homes and rentals in Rio to inspire others while applying appropriate architectural designs and quality materials that various builders have admired and replicated. The costs were slightly higher than builder's grade, but the return on investment is appreciated, and respective street views improved, and neighbors are pleased. The residents who live in Rio have volunteered for over 2 decades to lift our community up, and we support architectural design standards in Rio after 2 years of public meetings and workshops that began in 1999. Architectural standards were included on the list of goals for our master plan that was adopted by the Board of County Commissioners in 2001. CRA design standards exist and are currently in the code. They are not new. However, the proposed architectural design standards presented today make it easier for developers, builders, and property owners to design neighborhood-appropriate structures that will last the test of time. My husband and I ask you to move forward with achieving good design for CRA neighborhoods that comprise 1% of Martin County land and adopt the architectural design standards as presented. I would like to introduce you to, and I'm sure you know who he is. He came in a little late to the meeting, but we have a representative here that has not been introduced, Mr. Rick Gonzalez, who also sits on the Tallahassee Historic Preservation Board that makes selections for the National Register of Historic Places. Thank you.
Commissioners, Rick Gonzalez is part of our team and will be also speaking with you
Okay.
in a minute.
Bert Krebs is next, followed by Daniel Braden.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for your service and what you do for us. We really appreciate it. My name is Bert Krebs. I'm a resident of Hobe Sound. I've lived there since 1988. I'm also chair of the Hobe Sound Neighborhood Advisory Committee and the CRA, which I appreciate your appointment and your confidence in me. In addition, I'm a registered landscape architect, so I'm familiar with the codes and ordinances and guidelines that we all have to fit into. And I'm here to speak in favor of the proposed architectural guidelines. I believe they will preserve, protect, and enhance the historic character of our communities. I think it's about taking pride in our communities, taking pride in our properties. Currently, there are guidelines in place, as Dana and the group has talked about. They are not appropriate right now, and these will improve the current guidelines. They will provide flexibility and options. Many people have been working for a year on this project. They've carefully considered input for all different points of views, from the builders, the public, the architects, neighborhood advisories, social media, multiple ways. It's been put out for everyone to comment on. Thoroughly vetted, they've been adjusted and accepted by many people. The last piece of the puzzle is your vote, so I appreciate you, and I hope you'll consider voting in favor. Thanks.
Thank you. Daniel Braden is next.
Hi, my name is Dan Braden. Our architectural firm's been here since the 60s, and I am familiar that the AIA did discuss the situation. A couple of things were discussed and don't appear. One was we thought it was important to exempt churches from the CRA because churches have a 2,000-year history of architecture, and it seems kind of obnoxious of us to tell them what their church should look like. And it just seems to create a problem that the board doesn't want to have. The biggest concern is that there's no mention of cost in the CRA guidelines. I would do a lot of work for guys who build little houses, and my discussion this morning was that in the CRA, it costs $35,000 more to build a small house because of the regulations. The biggest regulation problem we have is there's a requirement that no matter where you are or what your flood zone is, you're required to have your finished floor be 21 inches above the finished grade. We're doing a project on Jefferson Street now where the finished grade is 3 feet above the sidewalk, yet the CRA still requires us to be 3 more steps on top of that. I don't think it's very friendly to people who are in wheelchairs or people who want to age in place that we require them to have 3 steps to get into their house. Now, in September of '22, the AIA wrote a letter requesting to have a discussion about this, and we've never had this discussion. And I don't understand where I've found where the Department of Justice wrote a letter stating that the Fair Housing Act prohibits practices that discriminate, and that you can't pass a law that discriminates a class of people, and requiring someone to put a 20-foot ramp to get into their house appears to me to be discrimination. And it's an unnecessary requirement. I know what the concerns were because people built houses and they didn't do them right and they flooded their neighbors. That's an enforcement problem. It shouldn't be a design regulation. It should be required the architect and the builder to provide proper drainage, and we shouldn't start telling architects how to practice architecture. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public like to address us on PH1? Back to the board. Commissioner Campy.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your efforts. I know that Jessica and Dana, through the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, have been, well, first off, they're based here. A lot of people don't realize that. They're based here in Stewart. They have a real sense of exactly what's happening. They're not out-of-towners. So that's appreciated. And I know that throughout my history with the CRAs, I've had sort of, I started out cold with the CRAs when I first showed up in 2008, because back then, the mechanism was not in place to really accomplish much. Excuse me. What happened is, with the TIF money, created enough dollars to sort of continue to plan, but never really to execute. And the recession was there, and I was one of the ones leading the charge in lowering the percentages of the TIF, because what I had heard from my community and what I had felt personally is that it was like, here's this beautiful plan of what could happen. It won't ever happen, but it is a beautiful plan. And then through the work of several, I won't get into the personalities, but a lot of very important, smart people came to town within the CRA and changed all of that. And then we had the dark days, 2012 through 2016, where the CRAs and the NACs were not taken seriously. The members, the volunteer members of the boards were dismissed, and it was reworked, and sort of the success and the progress ground to a halt. And I know, and I can speak for him, even though he's not here, because he said it many, many times in front of lots of people. Commissioner Jenkins, one of his primary catalysts for running was the concern that how the CRA in Hobe Sound had been derailed. And we certainly felt the same way in Palm City. And then from 2016 to now, it's been remarkable, really remarkable. All of the areas. Jensen and Rio had always had Julie and others like her that were leading the charge. In Palm City, we had Dr. Plymel and Rex Santel and Mike Searle, who've dedicated decades of their time to continue the vision. And now new people have come. I go to our NAC meetings in Palm City, and it's a very young board, which is very exciting because they've realized what's happened. And so several years ago, when Jessica and Dana worked on a full revamping, I remember at the time complimenting you on being experts in each of the NACs, literally knew the street names and the personalities and the specific benefits and projects that needed to be worked on. And you're doing it again. So I'm very, very pleased with your efforts. My conversations with Susan, Ms. Corris, was try to work with the people that are upset. Try to eliminate the concerns. Try to work with those people, hear what they have to say, and see if we can incorporate it. I like the fact that it's not a one-size-fits-all across the 6 of the NACs, which wouldn't have worked, because it's completely different in Hobe Sound as it is in Jensen and Golden Gate, as it is in Palm City. And you did that. I have had feedback. We all have gotten feedback, both pro and con to these changes. Several of the folks that had reached out to me, who I use the expression, they paid the price of admission. They are participating in this progress. Several of them are builders. Several of them are architects, members of the community that are really involved. As recently as yesterday, I had phone conversations with a couple of very well-known builders and asked them, are you okay with how this has worked out? And they said yes. Now, of course, they're not going to say, I like every single thing about it. But one, I think that their concerns were, you had asked the questions, and you listened. You listened to the NACs, you listened to the individuals. And what I told the folks yesterday, the builders, was these criteria is not put in place necessarily for them. It's not put in place, rules and regulations, guidelines, criteria is not normally for the people that are doing it at a very high level. It's for the folks that are trying to slip in the low-level work, that don't want to follow regulations, that are not necessarily going to deliver a product that everyone can be proud of, especially the immediate neighbors. We have had cases where people came forward and said, why did you allow that to happen? Why did you let my neighbor build something so out of character to the rest of our homes? So I look at these criteria as forcing the folks that would come to our community to do lower quality work. The guidelines are for them, not for a majority of our local builders, our local architects that are working at a much higher level, that understand that you have to have a certain amount of windows on the front of your house, and they have to be large enough so it doesn't look like some kind of pump station, because we've seen that work. And I think when the work is done right, people sometimes don't notice it because they're expecting that level of quality work and architecture and design. But when it's done wrong, everyone notices. So I would be happy to make the motion to accept these. I do agree with Mr. Braden that churches, I don't know if that's a thing or not, I think churches could be exempt from some of these rules because within a religion, there are certain architectural details that are appropriate to a religion. And I think the important, in final comment, the important thing for our residents to realize, as Ms. Corrs has said, this affects 1% of everything that the county's doing. 1% of our land falls within these regulations. So it's not like this is a blanket approach. And as Commissioner Vargas said, you move into certain neighborhoods, you're expecting a certain architectural feel of the community. The people that are already there expect it to continue to look like that. They don't need an outlier to come in and say, I'm going to build a glass monolith in my mission-style neighborhood. And I think this is not an HOA regulation. I get the concept of not wanting to be dictated by what can and can happen in your neighborhood. There's plenty of places you can live where that wouldn't be the case. If that's your goal to build a castle that's going to be red, buy a piece of property where you can build your red castle. But if you're within the CRAs, you've sort of agreed to respect your existing neighbors to build something that would be appropriate. And thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner. I just want to make one comment. As far as churches go, that's not what's in front of you today. That's not something that is part of this effort, as is the 21-inch. That is not part of this effort. 21-inch three-step is already in the code, and it's not an architectural standard, so it is not proposed for any changes today. So just wanted to make that distinction that that's not before you today.
Just in case it was, I thought that was a salient point, and I wanted to.
Yes, and certainly something we can look at.
Thank you.
Commissioner Capps.
Yes, I'd like to begin by saying that I appreciate all the work that staff has put into this, and the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council as well. Initially, I plan to support the adoption of this ordinance since lots of choices and flexibility are offered. And since there is a request for alternative compliance that is in place. In the last several days, I have changed my perspective on this for the following reasons. Our CRA communities are older neighborhoods that are largely built out. These standards would only apply to a few remaining vacant parcels in the CRAs. And there are so many choices for so few parcels that we're not really establishing the character of a neighborhood, like, say, in Newfield in Palm City, or in Abacoa in Jupiter, which are very lovely communities. I like those places. They're beautiful. Secondly, the owners of these vacant lots would resent requirements that they build their houses and businesses differently than most of the houses and businesses in the neighborhood, and would constantly be requesting alternative compliance. I served on the Hobe Sound Neighborhood Advisory Committee for 4 years, and we had a number of requests for alternative compliance that came in. And as I remember, we granted every single one of them. Because these were our neighbors, and because I imagine the board members felt like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and we ought to respect individual taste. And then lastly, if there are disagreements about these artistic elements and design standards, the homeowners would have to litigate. And I would hate to put our neighbors through this. This leads me to believe that it would be best to let the homeowners and business owners of these few remaining parcels in the CRAs make their own design choices.
Thank you. It was brought up that someone may have driven all the way from Tallahassee to attend this meeting today. So if so, would you like to address us?
Miami.
Morning.
Good morning. My name is Rick Gonzalez. I drove up from West Palm Beach. Thank you, Julie. Those were excellent words. I couldn't do, and Bert, old friend from Palm Beach from years ago. I've been a practicing architect for 40 years in South Florida and throughout the state of Florida. I'm also an AIA member and proud of that. And I'm also on the several state and national boards of historic preservation. Julie mentioned the Florida Historical Commission, which we review all the historic applications before they go and get certified in Washington, D.C. I'm the chairman of that subcommittee. And President Trump appointed me on his first term to the Advisory Council of Historic Preservation. I'm also the town architect for Abacoa, which you mentioned. And I grew up in Miami, Coral Gables, which you mentioned. So, and I had the pleasure of working with my good friend Dana and Treasure Coast. Mr. Ciampi, you said it perfectly. You are so fortunate to have someone like the Treasure Coast here in Stewart, helping out Martin County with all the issues. America today is under attack with very, very poor design across the country. Everything, the suburbs out west, the cities. The CRA is really about community redevelopment, Mr. Capps. And eventually, like the pressures in South Florida, there'll be a lot of redevelopment. So these standards are really about the minimum. They really are about the minimum, because first of all, it's only 1% of the county, which to me makes it really special. You have these 6 very special places that haven't been turned into part of the megalopolis of South Florida, which is 100 miles long of 100 towns that all merge into one another. You have 6 beautiful areas in your county. Your county is like the last place of quality, before the rest of Florida continues to go the way that it's going. And so these standards, which I had the pleasure of working with them, I am a practicing architect. I do a lot of work in my firm, REG Architects. We do a lot of residential, we do a lot of commercial, mixed-use buildings, and so forth. They're really good. They really help architects, builders, and developers. They set up standards. They help you keep that quality of design that if it's not there, you're going to get just about everything. You'll get McMansions, you'll get boxes. They're very minimal. They've been, we worked on it, over a year, right, Dana? Over the last year and a half, and where we're at today is a lot less than where we were when we were starting with the standards. The civic buildings, civic buildings are so important. Churches, they set the standards, right? The beauty of a civic building. So making sure that a civic building has some architectural beauty, in government buildings too, right? Beautiful, this mid-century modern building that you have here sets standards for the community, for developers, for architects to be able to use. So I encourage you all to give a unanimous vote for this wonderful effort. I know that might not be possible, but I'm here to answer any questions if you have any questions, and thank you for the opportunity. Oh, and by the way, we just got a project in Hobe Sound because of these standards. We're just about signing a contract for a little two-story mixed-use building. And I said to them, well, where did you find us? Well, we saw that you were working with the CRA, and we're excited about the design standards. A developer from South Florida, and they wanted to come into Martin County and do a nice little infill project. So I wanted to share that with you. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
For the record, we had nothing to do with that selection of Rick as the architect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that the addition of the ample photos and illustrations were extremely helpful. The cartoons in the item are extremely helpful for anyone who's looking to make an investment in the CRAs. However, I've talked to small builders, lot owners in Port Salerno and New Monrovia. These are largely historic owners, small lots, not big investors, very small investors. And the design standards for them are onerous. They make it too rigid and they make it more expensive. And we've just had tornadoes rip through disproportionately New Monrovia and Port Salerno and have destroyed a number of structures. And the people looking to rebuild, and everyone is eager to rebuild, are stuck with a bill that's maybe $20,000 more expensive than it would be outside the CRAs. I've talked to a couple builders who have said that they are not going to be able to build, even though they would love to, in New Monrovia and Port Salerno because of the additional costs of building. So unfortunately, I'm not going to support this either. Big developers can afford to build to these standards. Small ones, not so much. And I want to make sure that the historic owners of properties are the ones who are able to rebuild in Port Salerno.
So, Commissioner, I'd just like to point out to you that we have had those discussions as well with those small builders, and I know that Melrye was one of them, for example. And I asked Mr. Matos if he would send me what were the elements that he found made his price so much more, or a little bit more, or however, there's been different prices kind of thrown around here today. And he did. He sent me a list and the prices for those things. The stem wall was an additional cost. However, again, that's not what is before you today. That's already in our code. And he quoted that as $6,500. But I would like to point out that that is not the only alternative to building in the CRA. You can also build a monolithic slab, thickened, or other foundation types that are appropriate. So there are other ways to get around that, and again, not before you today. The 21 inches of fill with labor and skid steer, he said, was $7,500. Not in front of you today, but again, that cost may also be required for a slab-on-grade building. The hardy stucco front elevation, he said, was $4 per square foot of wall for a total of $3,900 for the models that he builds. We've eliminated that, so that's in the plus column. 18-inch overhang, he gave a whole, how much all of those things cost. It came out to about $3,500. We are changing that as well to make it more affordable, and we've taken out the gable ends, which was the fifth thing that he stated was a problem for him at $2,500, and now that has been eliminated as well. So that gives you another $6,500 of not additional costs. And all of the things on the list are things that you build anyway. You need doors, you need windows, you need a roof. They're all things that are already in a plan to build a home. I think that the affordability of it equals, if not exceeds, what's in the code now. What's in the code now for Port Salerno specifically are those 5 styles, and that's it. They don't get to have any of the flexibility that's being, say we keep that, we don't get any of the flexibility of choice or any of these savings that have been built into the new proposed document before you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Campion. Any further discussion? There's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed?
Opposed.
That motion passes 3-2 with Commissioners Capps and Hurd dissenting. Thank you. We will now take
Thank you very much.
a 10-minute break. Excellent. We're taking up public hearing number 2, which is a legislative public hearing to consider transmittal of comprehensive plan amendment 24-21, 9 Gem.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Clyde Doolin. For the record, I'm the Comprehensive Planning Administrator, and I'd like to introduce to you Amy Offenbach, our newest planner in the Comprehensive Planning Division. She'll be presenting the 9 Gems transmittal public hearing. This is a legislative public hearing. It's one of 3 public hearings that plan amendments typically go through. This is the second of the 3 and is for your consideration to transmit to the State Land Planning Agency. After review by State Land and Planning Agency staff, it'll come back to you for final adoption. And with that, Amy.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, as Clyde said, my name is Amy Offenbach, planner with the Martin County Growth Management Department. This is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 24-21, a request to change the future land use map for a property known as 9 Gems. The property owner is South Florida Water and Management District and Martin County, and the application was initiated by the Board of County Commissioners. And the affidavit of publication and certification of public notice has been turned into the clerk. This is an expedited amendment requiring 3 public hearings, and the local planning agency considered it on January 16th, 2025, with a vote of 4-0 recommending approval. And this is the second public hearing for transmittal to the state and local agencies for review. The amendment is to change the future land use on 1,533 acres from agricultural to institutional public conservation. And the property was purchased with a grant from Florida Communities Trust, and there is a deed of restrictive covenants requiring a future land use that is dedicated to open space and conservation. Figure 1 shows the subject property located south of Bridge Road between Pratt and Whitney Road here and Interstate 95. And the area for this amendment is the blue and red areas only. The letter of concurrency from the South Florida Water Management District did not include the green areas, but it does have a conservation easement on it. So again, this amendment is only for the blue and red areas. The adopted future land use map shows the subject property and most of the surrounding areas designated as agricultural, and the area in yellow down here is agricultural ranchette. And the proposed future land use map would have the subject property designated as institutional public conservation. The National Wetlands Inventory map shows that the subject site has a majority of the area with potential wetlands on it. Sorry. And the amendment has met all 4 of the criteria from Section 1-11 of the Comprehensive Plan in order for staff to recommend approval. And the amendment discourages urban sprawl pursuant to all 13 of the requirements from Florida state statutes, and meets 8 additional criteria that discourages the proliferation of urban sprawl. And so the amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and staff recommends approval. This concludes the presentation.
Questions for staff? I have one. This is terrific. I'm very, very supportive. The 1,353 acres that's north of the property that we're, Nine Gems, is also state-owned, and has a conservation easement, presumably. But why is it not included?
Hi, this is Michael Houston, Senior Project Manager, Martin County Public Works Department. I talked to my counterpart at the South Florida Water Management District, and they just wanted to focus on the FCT properties. So without their concurrence, we can't change the land use and zoning on those other areas.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Hetherington.
This is great. Pending any public comment, I will move staff's recommendation for approval.
Second.
Commissioner Capps.
I just have one general educational question. There's reference to an organization called Florida Communities Trust, and I believe that is the land acquisition arm of the Department of Environmental Protection. And then there's another state program called Florida Forever, and I think it'd be good to have you explain the differences between the two, particularly in light of what is getting ready to happen with half-cent sales tax money and tapping into these types of programs and leveraging our dollars in these state programs going forward as we acquire more and more environmentally sensitive lands. Maybe you could just explain the difference between the two.
Florida Forever is, I would say, just the land acquisition program in general. And I might be getting this wrong, but Florida Communities Trust is an actual agency within the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. They run Florida Forever, and they have specific grants for land acquisition that supports county or other municipalities that might want to acquire lands. So they can acquire lands through the Florida Forever program separate from that, and then it could just be managed by the state. But in this, for Florida Communities Trust specifically, people want to acquire property. So let's say Martin County wanted to acquire property. We could work with them to provide a grant to help us to acquire that property. When you do that, FCT has you signed a grant award agreement, and it puts restrictions on the deed for the property, and there are certain requirements that you then have to meet. So that includes, they want you to provide public access. So you're using public funds to acquire this property. So you need to provide public access. You need to restore conservation values on the property. This particular one is one of the more important ones to them, because if they don't want to give you money to acquire lands for conservation, and then you develop a use that's incompatible with the reason why it was acquired in the first place. So this provides that protection. So I believe that's the role, but I didn't really think about this beforehand in terms of like who Florida Forever actually is, but that's my general understanding of the difference between the two.
Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Donaldson.
It'd be nice if Mr. Houston could give us just 2 seconds on the value of the property that we're doing. It is, he's been involved in this. It's a really spectacular piece of property. And if you could describe a little, just 2 minutes of the efforts you put into it.
As a song, could you do it?
2 minutes all right, 2 minutes, we'll try and keep it brief. This property is critical to the restoration of the northwest fork of the Loxahatchee River, which is a federally designated wild and scenic river. So this is a part of the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan to provide dry season freshwater flows to the Loxahatchee River and to help restore the Loxahatchee itself. So this property is connected to one of the most amazing greenway systems in the state of Florida. You all might have heard of the Ocean to Lake Trail, but essentially in Martin County, we have a system of conservation lands that goes all the way from the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian River Lagoon across to Lake Okeechobee. And then if you go on the other side of Lake Okeechobee, there's one that goes all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. So that's unique in the state of Florida. There's no other place where there is a greenway system that crosses the entire state, and this is a part of that. It's a part of the Loxahatchee, and this restoration will improve wetland systems on the property. It'll provide the dry season flows to the Loxahatchee River. County bought it back in 2005, 2006, and we took the initial steps to restore the property. We removed invasive exotic vegetation and plugged ditches. So I've been working on that property since 2009 to try and restore it. Was that 2 minutes? I felt like that might have been 3, but yeah.
Commissioner Capps.
Yes, you referred to the Ocean to Lake Trail, and I'd just like to mention that the termination point of that trail is Hobe Sound Beach. And so you can walk from Hobe Sound Beach all the way to Lake Okeechobee. I understand it's about 60 miles.
I think I've heard 45, but
Is that right? Okay.
it's a long distance. And
Sounds like
the
a
actual trail is-
four-day camping trip. Yeah.
And the actual
I've never done that
trail
yet.
runs to the south of this property, but it's still in that whole cross, Florida greenway system.
Occasionally in Hobe Sound, we see people with backpacks coming down like A1A and even at Hobe Sound Beach, and they're ending their long journey from Lake Okeechobee to Hobe Sound Beach.
You probably saw me doing that. I just recently finished it.
Preparing for Machu Picchu.
Any further questions? There's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Commissioner, we need public comment.
Oh, sorry. Would anyone from the public like to address us? Seeing none, there's a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, members of the board.
Next up is public
You got a
hearing.
unanimous on your first item. Write it down.
It's gonna go on my second.
You started high, this goes downhill.
Next item is public hearing number 3, which is a public hearing to consider changes to Division 5, Hobe Sound, Article 12, Community Redevelopment Code, Land Development Regulations, Martin County Code regarding the maximum height for institutional use gymnasiums in the general sub-district. Mr. Sinnott.
Mr. Senate, remember when you were new? Now you're an old veteran.
Absolutely. I should mention that I actually hiked the full length of the Ocean to Lake Trail in February 2021.
I saw you there.
It's gorgeous. Yeah, exactly. It's gorgeous. It's like walking through a Bacchus painting. It's great.
How long have you been with the county now?
Just over 2 years. December marked my 2-year anniversary.
For you.
Thank you.
Proceed, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. I'm John Sennett, Senior Planner with Growth Management. This is a request by Architects Design Collaborative on behalf of Boys and Girls Club of Martin County for approval of an amendment to Division 5, Hobe Sound, Article 12, Community Redevelopment Code, Land Development Regulations, Martin County Code, to change the maximum allowable height for certain structures within the general subdistrict. The applicant proposes a maximum allowable height of 35 feet, 2 stories, specifically for gymnasiums developed as part of an institutional use. The current maximum allowable height within the general subdistrict is 30 feet, 2 stories. To give you some background, Division 5, Hobe Sound of Article 12, was established via Ordinance 1134 in 2020. Section 12.504, Development Standards of Division 5, received minor revisions with the adoption of Ordinance 1159 in 2021. Table HS5, Section 12.504 establishes criteria such as minimum lot size, density, maximum building coverage, minimum open space, and maximum building height. The applicant has requested that Table HS5, Section 12.504, be amended to allow a maximum building height of 35 feet, 2 stories, specifically for gymnasiums developed as part of an institutional use in the general subdistrict. Currently, the maximum allowable building height in the general subdistrict of the Hobe Sound CRA is 30 feet, 2 stories. This illustrates the proposed change to Table HS5. A footnote would be added to the height standards for the general subdistrict, specifying that gymnasiums developed as part of an institutional use may be constructed to a maximum height of 35 feet. The proposed change in allowable height for gymnasiums would facilitate an internal vertical clearance of about 25 feet. This ensures that building structural components in the HVAC system do not interfere with gameplay or player safety. The proposed height would accommodate various levels of play, practice, and community events. This change is specific to gymnasiums developed as part of an institutional use in the Hobe Sound CRA General Subdistrict. All other structures within the General Subdistrict would be subject to the current 30 feet, 2-story height limit. The General Subdistrict is also utilized in the Jensen Beach, Rio, Port Salerno, and Golden Gate CRAs. Again, this application is specific to the General Subdistrict as it's implemented in the Hobe Sound CRA. However, I did want to provide this table just to demonstrate that the request is consistent with the building heights currently allowed in the General Subdistrict present in other CRAs. As you can see in the table, structures in certain areas of the Jensen Beach CRA are allowed to be built to a maximum height of 35 feet or 3 stories. Within the General Subdistrict of the Rio CRA, 35 feet is the maximum building height. And within the Port Salerno and Golden Gate CRA's General Subdistrict, buildings can be built to a maximum height of 40 feet. This matter was heard before the LPA on January 16th of this year. They voted 4-0 for approval with 1 absence. Staff recommendation is to move that the board adopt the proposed ordinance amending Article 12, Community Redevelopment Code, Land Development Regulations, Martin County Code. That concludes my presentation.
Commissioner Campy.
Mr. Senate, thank you very much. You had me at Boys and Girls Club. I think that this makes perfect sense, that we would do our very small part in the effort to continue to revitalize not just one location of the Boys and Girls Club, but they're doing it at all of their locations. Perfect example is what they've accomplished in East Stewart, which is a remarkable, beautiful facility, and it's not just used as a gymnasium, it's a great meeting place for the community. They celebrated recently Sheriff Snyder's retirement there with over 300 people in the space. And so I'm very envious for my friend and colleague in Hobe Sound to have this new endeavor with the Boys and Girls Club. It would not be possible without their leader, Mr. Fletcher, Keith Fletcher, his staff, and the generous members of the community, not just in the Hobe Sound area, but probably the entire community, that he's able to have this vision with his team to continue to bring this level of service to our most needed, most deserving young people. So it's a thrill to be able to make a motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Applicant, would you like to make a presentation?
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. Raul Ocampo with ADC Architects. The request is really simple and it's minimal. If you compare the Stewart to what we're proposing for Hobe Sound, the difference in the height is quite vast. But the 5 feet that we're requesting is really needed in order to have a gymnasium that has the clear playing area that is required, or the playing height that is required. And then above that, of course, you've got things like air conditioning, lighting, structure, and all of those elements. So 35 feet, I believe, is the minimum that we could request. And I've already spoken with staff, who's been very, very helpful in terms of all of their analysis of this project. So unless you have any questions, that's really the end of my presentation.
Questions for Mr. Ocampo? Commissioner Hetherington.
I don't have any questions, but I was at the facility before they demoed it, and my sons played basketball and we know there's a lack of space for recreational facilities. I'm so happy that's getting underway, and I will gladly second it.
Can you tell me what's the height of the tallest building in Hope Sound's general subdistrict right now?
I don't have that information in front of me.
Close to it?
Not sure. I could,
Church?
yeah, maybe a church.
Blake's house?
You know, this is a noble intent, but there are consequences when you make exceptions. And this is no different from any other exception that we make. It establishes a precedent. There was a proposal some years ago when Florida Oceanographic was building their new facility to exceed the 40-foot height limit. And man, it was a noble request so that we can see from the Indian River Lagoon to the ocean, but it was going to establish a precedent from which we would not recover. And they wisely withdrew their request. And my fear is that this is a similar sort of request. It's not necessary. You don't need 35 feet. You want 35 feet. You can certainly do a gymnasium with 30 feet.
I would like to note that we did go to the NAC in November, and they did speak favorably of the proposal, and especially in light of the fact that the language itself is very narrow and specific to institutional use gymnasiums in the general subdistrict.
It is now. Commissioner, I fully support the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm delighted that you're building a new facility in Hope Sound. I'm just afraid of making exceptions because they always have consequences. Commissioner Campy.
Thank you. Just for clarity's sake, the oceanographic was above 40, and 40 is our number of countywide that we don't go over. And I agree that they came with a very exciting plan so that you could see from one side to the other. They did withdraw it after a lot of pushback, but the 40-foot or 4-story height limit is etched in granite in Martin County. This does not rise to that. And I actually fully support it. Thank you.
Commissioner Vargas.
So you mentioned institutional. Can you give me some other examples besides the gymnasium? Would it be a hospital? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, I can read some of the institutional uses. Oops. Oh, here we are.
I think my concern is any nonprofit can say this is an institution, and it may really not warrant it. I do understand Chairperson Hurd's concern, very much so. So if you'd give us some idea what else might fit in.
Right, so it would be, gymnasiums as part of an institutional use. Institutional uses include administrative services, not-for-profit, community centers, cultural or civic uses, neighborhood-assisted residences with 6 or fewer residents, neighborhood boat launch, places of worship, post offices, protective and emergency services, public libraries, public parks and recreation areas passive, residential care facilities, if established prior to the ordinance, educational institutions, public parks and recreation areas active, residential care facilities, recycling drop-off centers, and utilities. Now, obviously, some of those uses wouldn't really implement a gymnasium. Some of them would, and we feel this code change is the minimum to facilitate an attractive and useful facility.
So it would not just be gymnasiums that we're voting on, it's pretty much across the board.
It would be gymnasiums developed as part of an institutional use. It is specific,
That's specific, I
to
see.
gymnasiums as a structure.
Because you mentioned residential facilities also.
Yes, I was
That
just
effect,
listing the specific uses within the institutional category.
Understand.
So for example, if you were to develop a gymnasium as part of a school in the general subdistrict, then that gymnasium could go to 35 feet.
Okay, so we're referring to gymnasiums, not to living centers or some of the other uses that were listed there.
Correct.
Have to be spelled out specifically for that. gymnasiums.
Yes, the language of the code is such that it is a, I can pull up the footnote. As you can see in this slide, the proposed code change just adds a footnote to this table HS5. The footnote specifies that gymnasiums developed as part of an institutional use may be constructed to a maximum height of 35 feet. And again, that's specific to the general subdistrict of the Hobe Sound CRA.
Thank you.
And the height of a standard basketball hoop is
10 feet.
10 feet.
But the requirement, if I may, for play is 25 feet. You have to have 24 feet clear minimum.
Okay.
You have rather large structures when you build a gymnasium. The spans are quite large, therefore, structurally, you have to provide for at least 6 to 7 feet of structure to support it. In other words, trusses that are that deep. Air conditioning cannot go in between those trusses. The main trunks are going to be below those. So that's going to add probably another 30 to 36 inches. Then we have to have the lighting and the fire protection below that so that the lighting doesn't cast, or the air conditioning doesn't cast shadows on the floor. So when you add all of that up together, that's the request for the 35 feet. The existing gymnasium at Hobe Sound now, I believe, is at 32 feet. It's pitched. I don't know if you've been there, but if you have, you've noticed that all the air conditioning is on one end. Doesn't really function very well, but that's one of the problems that you arrive at. Obviously, when it was done back, I don't know, 20 some odd years ago, cost was a real factor, and the requirement to do a prefab metal building came into effect, and that's the reason for the height there. But had we done it today, we would not do that, especially if we're going to have a gymnasium that also serves as a community center, wherein you're going to have a large number of people congregated for other activities other than just the play of basketball.
Thank you. Would anyone from the public like to address us? Yes.
Excuse me, not from the public. My name is Audra Creech. I'm a land use and zoning attorney on behalf of Boys and Girls Club, and I did want to make one comment just to hopefully have the board have a little more comfort with this scenario. If, Mr. Johnson, if you could please go back to the chart that shows all of the CRA heights, that would be appreciated. Thank you so much. So I understand the concern about exceptions. I sincerely do, because yes, every single choice we make does have some consequence of some type, whether good or bad. However, I would suggest to you that this is not an exception in the general scheme of CRAs. We have the Golden Gate CRA with an automatic 40 across the board, no matter what use, an automatic 40 of maximum height. Port Salerno, again, across the board of Port Salerno, we've got a 40, which is 5 feet more than we're asking for and 5 feet more than the general currently. Rio, the general across the board, no matter if it's institutional use, no matter if it's a gymnasium, is 35 feet. Here, at the Growth Management Department and the Boys and Girls Club have made a very particular decision. They're not asking for, let's make it 35 across the board for everything. They're asking for a very specific subsection that would be allowed in Rio and Port Salerno, Golden Gate, and all of these other CRAs. They didn't ask for Hobe Sound to be 35 across the board. They asked for, can we have gymnasiums for institutional uses be 5 feet higher? Not, let's have 35 across the board of Hobe Sound. Can we have this particular subset 5 feet higher when other places that are in the same vein, Rio, Port Salerno, Golden Gate, are much higher across the entire board? And I would suggest that that is not an exception that would make that big of a difference in any way, shape, or form, because you already have it in Rio, Port Salerno, and Golden Gate, and it's not across the board. It is not an exception to the overall arching code. It is an exception that applies to one thing and one thing only, institutional uses with a gymnasium. I appreciate your time, and if I can answer any questions, I am here.
Any further questions? Commissioner Vargas.
I just say if it's restrictive language, tightly wound. So there's no confusion.
Yes, this highlighted portion on the screen here would be the footnote that's added, and it is about as restrictive as it can be while still accomplishing their goal.
Yeah, I understand. I see Jensen Beach is 24. Is that correct?
So yes, this is an excerpt from the table. Jensen Beach does have 24 as the standard for the general subdistrict. However, there is a footnote similarly in that development standards table, which specifies that structures along certain locations in the general subdistrict of Jensen Beach CRA can be built to 35 feet, 3 stories.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I second it.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? That motion passes 4-1 with Commissioner Hurd dissenting.
Thank you very much.
Next up is public hearing quasi judicial number 1, which is a public hearing to request approval of the 22nd Amendment to the Jupiter Hills Village Planned Unit Development Zoning Agreement, including a revised master site plan and Phase 9 final site plan. Mr. Sinnott.
Excuse me, Commissioner?
Nope, that's right. We've got a lot of stuff to cover first. Let's see. First of all, Mr. Sinnott, have you given to the clerk all the required materials?
Yes, I'm turning in my work history and the agenda item to be filed as Exhibit 1.
Excellent. Commissioner Vargas, any ex parte disclosures?
None already been filed.
Commissioner Capps?
If I have any, they have been filed.
I don't think I have any. If I do, they've been filed. Commissioner Campy?
I filed the fact that I had none.
And Commissioner Heatherington?
If any, they've been filed.
Now, would anyone who's going to be participating and providing testimony in this, please stand up and be sworn?
Raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I think we're ready to go, right?
Yes, there are no interveners.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm John Sinnott, Senior Planner with Growth Management. This is a request by Lucido and Associates on behalf of Jupiter Hills Club for approval of the 22nd Amendment to the Jupiter Hills Village PUD zoning agreement, including a revised master site plan and Phase 9 final site plan. The proposed development of Phase 9 consists of a 1-story, 32-bed building and associated infrastructure on an approximately 4.59-acre site to provide dormitory-style employee housing. Phase 9 is located approximately 430 feet northwest of the intersection of Southeast County Line Road and Southeast Federal Highway in Tequesta. Included is a request for a certificate of public facilities reservation. Here you can see the outline of the overall Jupiter Hills Village PUD in red. It's approximately 366 acres, located north of County Line Road. It currently contains 2 18-hole golf courses and ancillary uses, along with single-family detached dwellings, condominiums, and townhouse or villa-style buildings. Phase 9 is located in the southeast corner here in blue. Phase 9 is approximately 4.59 acres, and it fronts the Federal Highway. The northern portion of Phase 9 is currently developed as part of the golf course, while the remaining portion of Phase 9 is undeveloped. To the east of Phase 9 across Federal Highway, we see the R3A and WRC zoning districts along the intercoastal. To the south of the site is the Public Service District, and then to the west we see the remainder of the Jupiter Hills Village PUD and the PS zoning district. And this park is Tequesta Park. The future land use designation of Phase 9 is Estate Density 2 UPA. Across Federal Highway to the east, we see the Commercial Waterfront future land use designation. To the south is the General Institutional designation. And to the west, we see the remainder of the estate density 2 UPA designation and the recreational future land use. The Jupiter Hills Village PUD was originally established in 1978. Phase 9 was created in 1986 via the 9th PUD amendment. The master plan, which was approved as part of the 9th PUD amendment, designated Phase 9 for commercial use. And based on the most recent revised master site plan, which was approved in 2006, Phase 9 is still currently designated for commercial use. The proposed 22nd PUD amendment updates the proposed use of Phase 9 from commercial to employee housing, specifically for employees within the Jupiter Hills Village PUD. It creates a minimum parking rate of 1 space per bed for the employee housing. It establishes that all employees residing in the dormitory must be 18 years of age or older, and it includes a revised master site plan to reflect the Phase 9 employee housing use. The Phase 9 final site plan consists of a 1-story, 32-bed building and associated infrastructure to provide dormitory-style employee housing. It includes a 1.15-acre upland preserve area, a 0.83-acre landscaping buffer area, which will utilize existing native vegetation to the extent feasible and provide supplemental native plantings. So in addition to the upland preserve area and the landscape buffer, there's an additional 0.85-acre area in which existing native vegetation will remain. This is the site plan. On the left side of the plan, this is south of the building. You see the preserve area. On the north side, you see the existing golf course, which will remain, and then there's an area of native vegetation around the golf course, which will remain under this plan. This is the 32-bed building, 1-story. The dry detention area is between the building and US 1, and then along between the dry detention area and US 1 is the landscape buffer, which again, the landscape buffer consists of native vegetation supplemented with native plantings. This matter was heard before the LPA on January 16th, 2025. The LPA voted to approve it 4-0 with 1 absence. Development review staff have found the Jupiter Hills Club application to comply with all applicable regulations and the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan as detailed in the staff report. Staff recommendation is to move that the board receive and file the agenda item and its attachments, including the staff report as Exhibit 1. Move that the board approve the 22nd amendment to the Jupiter Hills Village PUD agreement, including the revised master site plan. And move that the board adopt the resolution approving the final site plan for Phase 9 of the Jupiter Hills Village PUD. That concludes my presentation.
Questions for Mr. Sinnott? Commissioner Capps.
Yes, this building that is proposed is right along US 1?
It is along, access will be provided from US 1.
How visible will it be from US 1?
I'll let the applicant discuss that when they come up to present, but there is, it's a roughly 30-foot landscape buffer between the US 1 right-of-way and the dry detention area, and then the building itself is set even farther to the west of the dry detention area. But the applicant can discuss that further.
Another question. The land that it's going to be put on, is this scrub habitat? Does this have scrub pines and scrub oaks? And this land would be land that would be very critical, vanishing environment for the scrub jays that exist in J.D. Park and along the rolling hills of southern Hobe Sound. And I have great concerns about that kind of habitat. I go hiking in it a lot, and I really like it. I'm actually fond of the blue scrub jays that I see. And the problem with it is that it's vanishing habitat. Another thing I've heard about that kind of habitat is once you disturb it and you pluck all that stuff out, it's never coming back. You can't really recreate that kind of habitat. In that white sugar sand, once you take that stuff out, all you're going to get is like exotics growing in there. It's a permanent erasing of that type of habitat. What are the current development allowances for this parcel? Express a little more about the current land use and zoning for this particular spot.
So the zoning is a state density 2 UPA. That's over the whole Jupiter Hills Village PUD. Phase 9 was designated for commercial use when it was originally created in 1986, and it's still designated for commercial use as of the latest master plan, which was from 2006. Going back to your comments about the habitat, the environmental assessment did identify scrub habitat on site, and as to part of that, the applicant will provide a preserve area. When you have scrub habitat, your preserve standards are more restrictive, so instead of just preserving 25% of the total upland area, they're preserving 25% of the total site area, which gives us a preserve area of about 1.15 acres. In addition to that preserve area, they are maintaining existing native vegetation along the golf course portion, and then their landscape buffers, they are preserving the existing vegetation to the extent feasible given the existing grade. And again, the applicant can discuss that more during their presentation.
So this is a PUD zoning agreement amendment, and with PUDs we need public benefits, or that's what we're looking for. What do you think some of those might be?
The applicant is not exactly deviating from our normal development standards. I'll let the applicant discuss some of the benefits, but one benefit is taking cars off the road, since they will be there. It's just about a mile from the entrance to their club. So obviously right now some of these employees might be housed miles and miles away. It takes trips off the road. By installing this building here, it provides some additional, housing stock to others.
Thank you.
Commissioner Vargas.
Yes. Have the studies been done about wildlife? Everybody's tortoise, wetlands, that type of thing?
Right. The EA did not identify any wetlands, just the upland habitat being scrub. The preserve area is capturing, the ideal habitat. I know some of it was impacted by exotics, so that played into the location of the preserve area. The preserve area being in the south of the site, it does abut an existing preserve area on the adjacent parcel. And then the EA did not identify any listed species. And then prior to building, they'll have to update their listed species survey just to make sure that no gopher tortoises migrated onto the site.
And that can happen, definitely. So I understand everything you said about Jupiter Hills Club having its employees right there on site. I will tell you my own personal experience. When I lived overseas, I was working for an employer, and they had employees living on site. Very nice, very clean, very modern, and it was quite comfortable for the employees because there'd be somebody to pick them up, and maybe this is the case here, or they could just walk to the facility where they worked. So I can see this, and I certainly understand the concerns of my fellow commissioners. This can, if we were to approve this particular building could only be used as dormitory for their employees. They couldn't say, well, we want to build an addition, and have something else that may complement, for more gain. Do you know what I'm saying? They could build townhomes, they could do something else. Is that what I'm understanding?
So the language of the amendment and the final site plan itself is specific for this use. If they wanted to change this, in any way, go to another use, they'd have to come back for another amendment.
It's still an amendment.
Correct.
Point.
So I'm looking at our revised master site plan and also the narrative of the planned unit development zoning agreement, and I don't see any mention of a 32 maximum density of 32 beds, because I also noticed that there are 49 parking spaces. So I want to be able to make sure that this doesn't turn into substandard housing. And if there's no mention of maximum number of beds, then what's to keep them from putting 50 beds in there?
It is documented on the site plan, and
It's not on the master.
at
It's not in the narrative for the PUD.
the master, I believe, does note the 32 beds
No, it doesn't.
as density in this case.
Master, do you have it?
Let me see.
Peter Walden, Deputy Growth Management Director. It is listed under the land uses on the master. It shows the residential types, major land uses, and employee housing is listed. And also under land use data, employee housing, 32 on 4.5 acres.
This is in the lower left-hand corner of the master.
Commissioner Hurd, Elise Elder, Deputy County Attorney, we could easily add a provision in the narrative of the agreement if the board desires.
Sure.
That could be added.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be only one parking spot per bed.
That, yes.
There are 49 parking spaces.
We can let the applicant discuss their current parking need, but you are correct that the amendment itself currently establishes a minimum parking rate of 1 space per bed.
And also, this is the future land use is estate density,
Correct.
2 units per acre.
Correct.
I know that before it became a PUD, that this kind of housing would not have been an allowable use. What makes it an allowable use just because it's in a PUD? I mean, the PUD, when it was approved, didn't specify that there was a planned or allowed dormitory housing.
That's correct. That's why we're before the board to make the amendment to allow the use and go from a commercial use to the dormitory housing.
How many dormitories would commercial allow?
It would allow a hotel there that would basically serve the same transient lodging up to 6 months would be available to them at 20 units per acre on a hotel. So we actually captured the residential density, even though this is an accessory use to the club. They had density to give, so we captured the 32 units as residential density on this project, which is less than what a hotel density would have been at 20 units per acre.
Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Brian Nolan with Lucido and Associates, representing Jupiter Hills Club. I also have in attendance with me today Artilla Cardonas of the Jupiter Hills Club, and Jerry Compton with Creech Engineers. If it pleases the board, I can run through my presentation.
Sure.
So again, this use is proposed employee housing within the Jupiter Hills PUD. This will be used by seasonal employees of the club, many of which are PGA professionals. A typical employee will travel around various clubs throughout the year, Jupiter Hills being one of them. Part of the reason we're doing this, or we're here today, is, as we all know, there's a shortage of affordable housing around, particularly short-term rentals, as many of these employees are seasonal. And as noted, housing the employees within the community will save trips. We are approximately 1 mile from the front door of the facility to the clubhouse, and we do have a direct sidewalk connection. Bicycles will be provided by the club. We have a bike rack in the plan that I'll go through in a minute. And also during inclement weather, the Jupiter Hills Club also has shuttles that they can use to get the employees from point A to point B. As staff stated, we are proposing to amend the approved use of Phase 9 from commercial to employee housing with a parking rate of 1 space minimum per bed, and a minimum age to reside in the housing of 18 years old. And we have updated the master plan graphic to reflect the proposed use, a graphic depiction of the preserve area, and we also noted the entry point and the turn lanes. So just for orientation, Phase 9 here highlighted. You will see the proposed site plan. The site is 4.59 acres, approximately 80% pervious, 20% impervious. As staff also noted, we have a 1.15 acre preserve area, or 25% of the site, with an additional 0.85 acres of native landscape to remain. And here is an aerial overlay with the site plan. You see the turning movements into and out of the site, a right in, right out off of Federal Highway. You'll see we sited the building within an area that is less vegetated, so to speak, than the rest of the site. And the building is about 90 feet from the property line, and it's about another 50 or 60 feet from the drive lane for US 1. You see here where the parking lot is located, a pedestrian access ramp. The site does ramp up from Federal. So you see we have the ADA compliant ramp and sidewalks surrounding the parking area. We are providing a bike rack. As I mentioned, the club plans to provide bicycles to the employees to get back and forth. We have our dry detention area between the building and US 1, our lift station, the refuse enclosure. As mentioned, we do have a native preserve on site. This preserve is sited also adjacent to other existing preserve to provide a cohesive, maybe larger preserve area, if you will. We also do have an additional almost 0.9 or 0.85 acres to be exact, native landscaping to remain, both along US 1 to the east and to the west by the golf course. You can see here the landscape plan. It is 100% native vegetation. As to views into the building, we are preserving to the extent we can. Final engineering plans are still being worked out. Like I said, there is grading issues, but we do propose a decent landscape buffer between the building and US 1. Admittedly, there will probably be a shot of the narrow side of the building from Federal as you pass the project entry. As to the building, it is single story, 20 feet in height. With 2 entry points. We have a common area kitchen, laundry room, laundry facilities for the employees to utilize. We do have a manager's suite, a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom with a kitchenette and small eating area for the managers, and 30 employee rooms, including 4 accessible rooms. And I appreciate your time, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Commissioner Capps.
Yes, I applaud your efforts to have some affordable housing for working people. That is good. But this land, and this type of land, is so sensitive environmentally that I don't think I can support this. Scrub habitat is disappearing in this state, and there are lots of creatures that can only live there. And for that reason, I don't think I can support this.
Can you point to the public benefits in the PUD?
As we indicated, we are providing the preservation and additional native landscape. We are taking trips off the road and providing affordable housing for these employees on site. I think over and above that which was already approved in the original PUD, those are the benefits.
There are no modifications to the original PUD. At least they weren't included in my packet. So there are no public benefits that are accruing as part of this amendment. At least I don't have it. Is the
give you
PUD,
steps.
the public benefit, have they been amended?
No, it's a 366-acre existing PUD from 1978. Those benefits were probably established at that time. This is an additional 4.5 acres that was done as part of Phase 9 of the project. So we didn't feel that anything above the trip capturing and the affordable housing aspect of the PUD was necessary.
And I would offer too that, as it was touched on, the approved use in the master plan is commercial. And I would argue that this is a less intense use. We can argue the degree to which, but that what could potentially be on the site under a blanket commercial designation. Again, to have a viable commercial site, we have 80% of this site is left pervious versus 20% of the site as impervious. So I think this proposal, I think, one could argue is a far less intense use than what could potentially be on the site. Now, granted, whatever is on the site, depending on the level, may have to come before you. But as it stands now, this is a relatively lower intense use.
Commissioner Capps.
Who owns this land right now?
Jupiter Hills.
The HOA, the homeowners association, or the?
Yeah, the club.
The club. Okay. All right, good. Thank you.
Commissioner Campy.
Thank you very much. A lot to unpack here. Just for clarity's sake, the original PUD was nearly 50 years ago. I agree with you and what staff had mentioned, that I'm sure there was an extraction of a public benefit then for the overall site, if that was a thing that was happening back in the late 70s. So I don't think that it would be necessarily fair that every time that the club came forward looking to make some kind of an alteration, that they should have to give an additional benefit of consequence. I think the things that our staff mentioned and you reiterated about less cars on the road, the opportunity to create a housing, because if those folks don't move into this facility, they're somewhere else in the community utilizing rental properties that someone else could use if they didn't have the option. As you mentioned it, back in 1986, nearly 40 years ago, it had a commercial use for that specific property since then. And it could have been, from what I'm hearing from our staff, it could have been a hotel, which if the concern is how much can you see this from US 1, I'm sure you could see the hotel from US 1. I'm sure that 32 beds generates way less trips than a hotel would, which would be like one of the highest trip generators. As far as I can imagine, the highest trip generation would be a hotel. Change the character of the area down there. I know on the Marines, on the water side, it's kind of a marine vibe. What you said is true in terms of the plan that you showed. Out of the 4.5 acres, you're really only utilizing 1.5 acres. So to my colleague, Commissioner Capps' concern, which I hear him, about the decrease of habitat, what you are proposing would leave the most potential habitat. So I check that. And I hear lots of people talking. When one of the questions was, well, how come dormitory housing for employees wasn't listed originally on the PUD back in 1978? Because that wasn't a thing back then. But it's certainly a thing now. Golf courses in particular, and I have a history and a background with golf courses. You are the first people that have gotten all the way to the commission, as far as I know, with the concept of finding some kind of housing for employees. I know some of the other golf course that we've discussed. I think what also needs to be taken into consideration for decision-making for the five of us is that Jupiter Hills Club and Community is one of the premier, I'll speak for the golf course, is one of the premier golf courses, not just in our area or in the state, but in the country. It is renowned. And we are so fortunate as a community to have it located here. So I think, in my opinion at least, we should be doing everything we can to facilitate what you'd be looking to do and to thank you for that, because I can imagine the tax base generation is monstrous with the community and the club. You really give us, it's a feather in the cap of Martin County, as far as I'm concerned, to have Jupiter Hills Club here. It could have been a different commercial use. You have created the smallest footprint in the area that you could use. So, to my colleague's point, there still will be uninterrupted, undisturbed habitat. And you own the property, you've been paying taxes on the property, have a legitimate right to utilize the property as you see fit. And when we talk about trying to create housing opportunities, especially for workforce, you're doing it. For all of those reasons, I would happily make the motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Commissioner Vargas?
Yes, I do understand and I do empathize with Commissioner Capps, because I like to hike and I like to see vegetation. I like to see our natural environment undisturbed. To my past point about having lived and understand the convenience and the affordability as a viable benefit to attracting quality employees, permanency, seasonal permitting. I think that this is a project that is not as invasive as some other petitions we've received, but it would have to be deemed exclusively for employee use and maintained up to the caliber of the club itself.
Fully understood, and this use is very limited to employee housing, and it is Jupiter Hills Club, and they will make sure that it is kept up to speed.
Right, I assume it's an equity membership club. So this is owned by the members, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so in the future, if they say, gee, wouldn't it be nice to put a hotel, more units here? That cannot happen because this would be written very tightly, where there's no airspace for anything else. Is that correct?
Correct. The only way that could happen, with my knowledge, it would be coming back here to change the use.
But don't come back here to change the use.
Don't plan on it.
Good.
Commissioner Heatherington?
Yeah, I think we have a major challenge facing us with workforce and affordable housing. And like Commissioner Campy said, I actually appreciate that there are private, we all have to have skin in that game to face some of this. I have some constituents in my district who work at clubs around the county and their rent has doubled. And they're looking at moving out of the area, and they're good contributing employees of some of these clubs and some of the things that we feel are assets in Martin County. So I particularly like that there's skin in the game, and the private sector and the public sector, we're all in this together to address workforce housing. So I like the project. I like the way you've used it. I'm satisfied with the preserve area and the way you've managed it and increased the preserve. So I will gladly second it.
Would anyone from the public like to address us?
Commissioner Hurd, I just need Mr. Nolan to either turn in his affidavit of notice or confirm that you turned it in already.
Sure. It was turned in at LPA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? I still am dissatisfied with the language of the PUD zoning agreement. There's no mention of a limitation of beds. There's only the mention of one parking spot will be provided per employee, and there are 49 parking spots. I'm also concerned that there's not an amended PUD agreement, because there are required to be public benefits, and if there are public benefits, they are not listed. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
That motion passes 3-2 with Commissioners Capps and Hurd dissenting. We'll break for lunch now. Shall we come back at 1:30? Is that good?